Welcome back to Trucker Talk Radio, Behind the Wheelhouse. I'm Justin. My co-host John couldn't make it today, so he has gave me the keys to run the show. So hopefully I'll do an okay job. But we got a great guest lined up for today for you guys. Today we're talking about a part of the industry that a lot of people don't fully understand, but it's a critical to keeping freight moving, especially when it comes to oversize and super loads. Dani Howells is known as the Permit Girl and is joining us today. She specializes in permits for oversized loads and brings a ton of real world experience from across the trucking industry. Welcome in, Dani. How are you today?
I'm good, thanks. Thanks for having me. I'm
No.
pretty nervous. This is my second podcast,
Ah,
so
oh no, you'll be fine. This is my first time hosting, so we'll get through it together. It's not a problem. But we appreciate you taking the time. I'd seen on your LinkedIn about that you've been in basically in trucking since birth almost. Kind of tell us your story and how all that came about, and then how you got into what you're doing now.
so pretty much like my dad, he was they
Mhm.
call them Continental Truckers in the UK. Till the age of 3, like he started before I was born. And
Mhm.
then to the age of 3, he worked for what is it, inner city GB in the UK and went all over Europe. Like he was gone like months at a time, home for a couple of weeks, gone for months at a time. And this was before cell phones, Facebook, chat,
Right.
everything. So when he was gone, he was in a truck. So he would have to stop somewhere with a landline, call
Hmm.
my mom, and talk. But I was just a baby. And pretty much to the age of 3, he was gone. Then he came home one day, and I turned around to my mom and I was just like, who's that? And that hit home for him. And
Right. I bet.
farming. I was born in England and then moved to Scotland when I was 6. My dad did pig farming in Scotland as well. And then we moved to Alberta, Canada when I was 12. And he came in doing pig farming, but his background was farming, heavy duty mechanics, and trucking.
Hmm.
And his heavy duty mechanics didn't like like it didn't cross over and work well for being, like a certified
Right.
heavy duty mechanic. So he's like, hey, I'm going to go trucking. And he did that when I was about 13, 14 years old. And ever since then, like, because I always wanted to be like my dad. My dad was my hero. So, pretty much, yeah, like he got into trucking and I seen how cool it was. And I got the bug. That's really what it
I
was.
bet.
I got the bug. And I wanted to be a truck driver. And
Mhm.
then when I was 18, I got pregnant with my eldest son. I went and worked for like trucking companies doing swamping, labor work. I did work in
Right.
pipeline, tried to do my welding. Just by chance, I got a phone call from a permitting agency and they're like, "Yeah, we
Mhm.
want to have a job interview with you." And this was back in the recession of like I want to say it was like 2016, 2017. Canada
Okay.
went through a recession and my EI was coming up and I was just like, okay, cool. I just thought of it as a job, right?
Hmm.
Didn't really have any idea of what I actually applied for because I applied for everything.
Anything and everything, right? I understand that.
Yeah, so I went, I did the interview, got the job, did some training, and I realized I was like, okay, I can't be a truck driver. Doing swamping, I'm 100 pounds soaking wet. I'm 5'6".
Would you, for our audience, let them know what swamping is, just in case there's
Oh,
some out there that don't know? So,
yeah, so swamping pretty much is like being a trucker's helper. Mostly in the oil field is where you get swamping, like you
right.
help load stuff onto the trailer.
Hmm.
You help unload it. Sometimes you have like the crane trucks that have like the big picker dolly or the crane
The boom. Hmm.
boom on the actual truck. You're literally just like a trucker's helper. Whatever
Okay.
stuff the trucker didn't want to do, you had to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was too small. I
I
I'm
understand.
not afraid to say that it was hard work and I was not built for that work.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it was fun. Like the adventures used to go down like random roads, and it'd be like, hey, when you get to the T, you see one big tree on one side, one small tree on the other. Take the turn with the small tree. Don't take the one with the
Yeah.
big tree, small tree.
Yeah.
Or when you pass like three rocks in a row, turn left. Like that
Mm.
was your,
Um,
that was what you
yeah,
were
I remember
kind of
those days.
in.
Yep. The
Yeah. So,
MapQuest or Landmark. I
hmm
remember those days. It's and GPS has taken over our lives so much in driving and trucking and all, but it's not always right. You see those funny videos where they show a truck off in the woods somewhere, but it's AI created or whatever. But that can easily happen. I mean, the GPS is not always right, and everybody just takes it for granted and just listens and turns. So, but yeah, those were interesting times. I sit back and wonder a lot. How did we make it with like those directions?
right.
How
And
did we really get to point A to point B?
right. And like with the map books now, like I have to go and use map books for like Saskatchewan, for instance, because Saskatchewan, they're just starting to put road names on Google Maps.
Oh, okay.
And when I started, Google Maps had no road names in Saskatchewan, and you had to go off a paper map to find
Hmm.
the name of the grid road, so you could send it to the RM and get your RM permit. It's funny you say that about like, ending up in like a forest or something because
Hmm.
like Saskatchewan and some other like Kansas as well, I found is a little bit like that. They have roads on the map and like on Google Map, but they're actually just like tracks in a farmer's field. It's not a road. It's just tracks. I've had so many phone calls from drivers being like,
Oh, wow.
why are you putting me on a farmer's field like little, there's just tire
Right.
and I'm like, Saskatchewan put you on that road. It wasn't me. Like that's one thing for sure. And like every state, province,
Hmm.
territory, they're all little countries within a country. But
Hmm.
then the counties are little countries within the country within the
Okay.
country. There's different gray areas, there's different rules. Like you can do this in one place, but as soon as you
Hmm.
cross over border, you can't do it in
It's
that
something different.
place. And
Yeah.
it's a mess, really. It and I don't blame guides for thinking, I'm not doing this. I can't. I you know.
Well, I wanted to ask you, since you're in Canada, how different is trucking in general from the States? Like, you're talking about how roads aren't being, just
Yeah.
now becoming to the forefront on Google Maps stuff. Is there a lot of difference, or is it, pretty much the same now, or how is it different?
It's so contradictory, honestly. Like it's the same but different. I don't know. I don't even know how to explain it, but it's like I prefer to permit in the US, honestly,
Hmm.
because there's more room. You know what like there's
Right.
more opportunity to learn a lot,
Mm.
and that's my biggest thing is to learn a lot more because as I said, like each state and province is like a different country. They all have their
Hmm.
own rules and regulations, and some of them are the same from state to state. And then there's some where it's like, yes, you can do this in this state, but in this state you need to do it this way, but you can do
Hmm.
they're all contradictory to each other. And personally, like in the States, it's a lot easier. You kind of know what to expect.
Mm.
While in
Makes sense.
Canada, it's like you have one move where it's like perfect, it went through, awesome. But and like it does happen, this does happen in the States as well, but it's like you'll have one move, it goes through awesome, no problems, great. You'll have the same exact move a week later with a different permit person in like the
Mhm.
province or the state, and they'll be like, well, no, you can't do this because it doesn't meet policy, blah, blah, blah. You can't do that because of this. You can't, that is not
Mhm.
possible. Oh, you want to move this? Well, we need XYZ in order for you to move that to there, even though the week prior, with a
Yeah.
different permit person, you were able to just put a permit application in, get going. The issue with permits is that it's not actually rules and regulations. They leave it down to interpretation, how you
Uh,
interpret the rules. So I could interpret things, and I don't like to. read the permit and explain people the permit, because the way I interpret things could be completely different to what they actually mean, could be completely
Hmm.
different to what the DOT interpret it to be.
Way
And
too
I
much
think
gray area there.
that is, and
Mm.
like that's one thing I find is a big issue with permitting as well, because it's like 90 to 85% of it is just pure interpretation, how you think you should haul that load.
There's too many people involved because you got yourself, you got the permit office, you got the driver, you got a broker, you got the customer that's got the load. There's just way too many hands in it to leave it up to that. It needs to be straight black and white. You do it this way or you do. Yeah, I could see where that would definitely be an issue.
Yeah, the other issue is that you have, and like I'm not going to put down anyone's experience, because you know what, we all started somewhat.
That's right.
I started where I understood what 90% meant, but you ask me what a 13 axle setup is. What's a 13, but it's like
Right.
we all have to start somewhere. And the issue I find is that a lot of the times is the office,
Hmm.
the broker, whoever who wants that load from A to B will tell drivers, especially some that don't have the experience, to turn around and
Hmm.
say, no, that's not right. No, I'm not doing that. That's not proper. They'll turn around and say, like, I call them little white lies or
Right.
little boosts of confidence, where they'll be like, "Oh yeah, you can go do this. That's totally legal. You can go do that. You can go do that." Like, oh, this state, they don't care. This one, they don't care. Go this way. That's the other issue too, is that there's so much misinformation in permitting,
Hmm.
in what's legal, in what's not legal. When pilot cards are needed, when bucket trucks are like all that stuff. There's so much misinterpretation,
Hmm.
misunderstanding, misinformation, and you call up and
Hmm.
ask for information, and it depends on the person you're talking to what kind of information you get. And I found
Right.
now that a lot of states and provinces, instead of telling you over the phone or over email, like, yep, this is what you do, this is what happens, there you go, they'll refer you to their policy book. Have you ever read a state or provincial policy book?
No, no, I'd
As
hate
far
to
as
even
I'm
start
concerned,
on one.
It's Chinese, and
Yeah,
it's set
right.
up like
Exactly. So,
section
mhm.
25.70,
Yeah.
article 254. And you're like, okay, and it's 1,000-page booklet. And you're thinking,
Mhm.
okay,
Yeah, I come from the LTL world, and I tried to learn all that, but like just to give an example, if you were to ship a chair, LTL, well, it's different classification if it's made out of wood or metal. It's
yeah,
different if it's got leather or a wood seat or a leather seat or got wheels on it, and it's just like y'all making this stuff way too complicated. It's a
but
chair. Let's call it that. So
has
I can
the wood been
imagine.
treated? Has
Right,
it been
exactly.
treated with wood
Yes, I
thinner?
mean,
Is it a hazardous load
yes,
because you have wood thinner on there? Does the chair
exactly.
have, a cushion or plastic? If it has plastic, then it needs to
Hmm.
have this section,
Yeah.
article, blah, 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 where you need to wash it with some kind of
Hmm.
thing to make it worthy of being on your truck. It's
Yeah.
bullshit. It's
Yeah.
horrible.
And I will say too, from I used to have a lumber company and I used to ship lumber into Canada. But that was from Africa and South America that had already crossed our borders. I can only imagine you having to deal with which I have no problem with the Canadian customs. They're very
Mhm.
thorough and really they're probably better than ours here in the States. But man, it is tough. I mean, they
Yeah.
will hold. I've had a truck with, I had all the documents that still got held there a week just because one little thing didn't add up. And it actually did. But like you said, it was somebody thought of it a different way. And truck driver sat for a week. So I can imagine the pains that you go through when it's out of your control. But
Oh,
speaking on that, tell us a little bit about, what all type of permits you pull, what you offer there, and then I'm going to ask you, to kind of walk through an oversized load of, what you got to have. What do you need from the broker, the dispatcher, what do you need from that kind of stuff to kind of educate our listeners a little bit.
Okay, so pretty much I can permit everything from a pickup truck to I don't even like as many wheels as you want. I do
Uh-huh.
regular permits, licensing and fuel. I do amber beacon lights. I can do they call them relaxation permits, but it's like if you're a legal load of 100% and you're going on a band road of like 75 or 90%, I can talk
Hmm.
to the counties or the state or the province, and I can get you something called a relaxation permit, which allows you to haul 100% on that band road. I can do, oh man, do we have enough time?
Sure, sure,
I
go
can
ahead.
do overweight oversizes. I can do super loads. I can do mega moves. I get utility approvals, trooper requests, pilots, bucket trucks, utility escorts. Man, everything.
No.
Anything to do with a permit
Hmm.
provision, I can do.
Okay.
Anything to get that, like route surveys, traffic management plans, anything that's needed to get that approval, I can
Hmm.
do or I can get. I have many contacts in the industry, Canada wide and US side,
Oh,
where it's
nice.
like, okay, they're here. I need a route survey, all this stuff.
Hmm.
Okay, I'll give this guy a call. He'll help me.
Hmm.
And, and like I'm all about spreading the work, like I have
Right.
all like I do these super loads and it's like, okay, well, I know they were calling me asking for work. If
Hmm.
there's any, loads that I know, I'll give them a shot and see, what they can
Hmm.
do for me. And what I do is like if I bring on pilots, bucket trucks, anything like that, I get them to bill directly to the company, like the hauling company.
Hmm.
I
Right.
don't do any, I'm just kind of like the contact. I'm the organizer and coordinator
Hmm.
to where I'm just like, okay, that needs to be there. You need to do this. They're going to contact you. This is kind of what goes on. Like, I'm the middleman for everything. Pretty much, like, I will talk to, sometimes I'm even talking to the broker's customer because
Hmm.
there's just some things that I need that I can't alliterate to
Right.
the broker or the company or whatever that I need. And it's like, hey, can I just talk to your shipper and ask him this information? Yeah, for sure. And like, I
Hmm.
like to cut out as many middlemen as possible, especially with super loads, especially with mega moves, because the
Hmm.
more middlemen you have in that, the more the breakdown in communication happens, the more people interpret things differently, the more things get confused. Like, oh, you said this would be done by the. I was like, no, I said it could be done by this time, but we're looking at this instead.
Right.
There's also a lot of egos as well. I
Oh
find,
yeah.
you know what
Well,
I mean?
well,
Like,
I was going to even say, like with a lot of the products that you would deal with Superloads, Mega Moves, or even oversized, they don't know anything about the product. They just know it needs to be this, and it goes from A to B. And you're exactly right. Just cutting them out, not making them feel like they don't know, but just can I just talk to the manufacturer? They know
yeah,
every little detail about that product, so you can speed things up because it. I can only imagine in permitting it doesn't take but one little thing and it's a huge delay or it's an extra day.
yeah,
And I've been in this situation and I didn't know it either. Is hey, just let the permit people do their job. Just like, hey, give them the number because it's going to come back on you as the dispatcher. Somebody's going to come blame you because that load's sitting a day and it's a $5,000 fine or what it could,
oh
whatever
yeah,
it could be, so
yeah.
definitely.
It's one thing I also find too, and it's like it's not cutting down people or anything like that, but it's like a lot of brokers actually used to be heavy haul drivers.
Hmm.
I
Okay.
found. So they do understand the load. They do understand the complexity that comes with doing such like a magnitude of a load. But
Hmm.
the customer who is trying to ship it and get it to, you know, who owns it, they don't quite understand what actually goes into getting it from point A to point B. All they see is that, okay, it's this big ugly thing. You're going to put it on a truck. And, I drive a little
Right.
Mazda R6 on, the interstate, and like that overpass looks really big. You can fit that through that when honestly it's like, what, 15, 6 high, and you're thinking, well, this is 24-foot high. That's the other thing too, is that you're trying to make them comprehend that, hey, no, granted, yeah, in a perfect world, I should be out of a job. You know what I mean? Like in a perfect world,
Right.
everything should be perfect and,
Hmm.
things should be able to go that way. But in reality, no, there's so much red tape, there's so much paperwork, there's so much liability. And say, and I have this all the time, especially with machinery and buildings. I hate doing high loads, wide loads, and sometimes overweight for
Hmm.
buildings and machinery because the shipper will turn around, or like the person in charge of getting the load like to a carrier and saying, hey, this is what we have, can you go pick it up here, go here, whatever. 9 times out of 10 they always have the wrong dimensions somewhere along the line, and vessels as well, vessels and tanks, and they don't think about like the chimney. They don't measure the chimney on top. They don't
No.
measure the flanges on the side. And you're sitting there and you're thinking, I've got an 18-foot high approved permit. Now I've got to change it to 22 feet. And that's the issue too, is that you can go from like a 15, 16-foot load in some states, but as soon as you add a foot, 2 feet onto it, it is a whole different ball game. That's utilities. That is
Hmm.
high
Different
poles. That
routes and
is
everything. Yep.
police. That's, and then you're trying to tell people like, they're like, oh, it's not that hard, like it's only 2 feet. And it's like, yeah, it's only 2 feet, but you going from, yeah, we'll get it in a couple of days to, yeah, we'll get it in a couple of weeks. Like that's where you're kind of changing things up. And they don't really understand either that
Hmm.
you're kind of at the mercy of the permit office, the utility companies, the
Hmm.
engineers, because you could have a perfectly planned route, you could have a perfectly planned route survey, utilities say yes, state says yes. You go to that county and they go, no, you can't use that road. You have to go over here. You have to use that county's road. You're not using our county's road. So then you have to completely change everything. And
Hmm.
then you find out it's a new utility company. They require 30 days notice before they will go out and do anything. And your load is sitting at the border, and you're sitting there thinking, why didn't I do a regular job like every other girl and go to hair school or be a nurse?
Right.
Or why did I have to choose this line of work?
Well, so needless to say, it doesn't take very much at all to mess everything up, and you basically have to start over from scratch. So, with saying that, I would like for you to talk directly to the drivers for a moment. Kind of explain to them in a little bit more detail because I've had this happen to me back when I used to dispatch. We had the permit department, we'd send everything over, they would handle it. It was taken care of to the best of my knowledge, being the dispatcher. Well, then something happened. The drivers, sitting, can't do something, down for a day or in trouble. Explain that it's not realistically the permits person's fault. It's the communication as you talked about. And really, I would guess a lot of this is out of the driver's hands because they're not the ones getting the measurements until after they don't know anything till it's on the truck. So at that point it's too late. So if you could just go into a little bit of that to kind of make sure that the drivers understand that it's not your fault. You can only do so much based on what you're given.
Yeah, so pretty much it's a company where, say, I'm not allowed to talk to the drivers, but I have to deal with the
Hmm.
dispatch, for instance. I have to go off what your dispatch gives me.
Exactly.
9 times out of 10, if I get something from a dispatch or even a driver, they do the exact measurement. They
Hmm.
pad it, but it's usually 9 times out of 10 the exact measurement. So then they don't fall into superload status, mega move status, all this stuff.
Mhm.
I always pad.
I don't blame you.
And then that does put you into sometimes superload status, stuff like that. But it's not because I'm trying to make your life harder. I'm not trying to make you miss time with your kids or family, or I'm pro trucker. No matter what area I work in, I am always for the trucker, the driver, the one doing the load, the one spending the time away. I do that for your insurance, your
Mhm.
safety, and everyone else's safety. It's not a fact of I want to be spiteful person and make you sit
Right.
there and like that's not what I've learned because I've been doing it 11 years now, nearly 11 years.
Mhm.
Whatever I get from a dispatcher or driver, you add a foot, 6 inches to a foot on. And the other things that I like, not many other permit people understand too, is that say you're permitting a machine
Mhm.
and you got told it was dressed, but it's not dressed. And when I say dressed, I mean like, all the ripper, like say a ripper, the blade, the sometimes the cab, like all that stuff. That's what it means by dressed. It's not taken apart and
Mhm.
only the foundation left. Undressed is when it's just kind of the frame. So you go there thinking, okay, it's going to be this many £1,000. My trailer will, because that's the other thing too, is that it's physics.
Mhm.
If I have this much weight on my trailer is going to bow down this much. That is going to give me this much height that I can
Mhm.
take off. But then you get there and you find out it's undressed. But
Right.
then the exhaust is still on there sticking out. And then you're sitting there thinking, I've just gained an extra 6 inches here.
Well, I would think too, now it might cost more, but if you're close to moving up to the next tier into a super load or something, aren't you better off just going ahead and being permitted for if you're within a foot of that, even though it's going to cost more, it's going to save you in the long run, I would guess 7 out of 10 times.
Yeah, it is. And I always tell people that I'm like, it's better to be safer than sorry because I can go out, get you $500 worth of permits. That one little wrong dimension could cost you that 500 plus another 1,500. You know
Right.
what I mean? And
Hmm.
then the other thing is too, is that in these states, they do route you on routes where say you're 14.6 high and the bridge is 14.7. They will route you under that bridge. Now, if you're hauling, say, a dozer and you have bounce in your trailer, well, your bounce can be up to 6 inches, depending on how your road is. You're gonna hit that overpass, like unless you drive like an old lady, doing
Right.
50 50 kilometers an hour, just looking at everything, the bounce is gonna scrape,
Hmm.
right? And then you'll end up on Facebook. So,
Exactly.
and that's
Yep.
my biggest fear too, is the load that I have permitted ending up on Facebook and me sitting there thinking, is it my fault? Did I do that?
Right.
Like, is it, and is weight as well. That's
Hmm.
a big one. Like dimensions to me, dimensions are huge, but
Hmm.
weight is also a big one as well. And, I've worked for companies where they don't really take care of well, I shouldn't say company that didn't take care of their equipment and they would
Hmm.
overload that trailer and then they'd be driving and then all of a sudden the neck would snap. And luckily enough,
Wow.
no one was around where it could have killed someone.
Exactly.
And I get a little more into it than just permits as well. I'm just like, okay, well, what's the tonnage of your trailer? And I get a lot of people call me as well and be like, hey, I got this step deck. I got this load at this much. Can I permit max weights on this trailer? Do I need a Jeep or a booster? And I'm like, well, max capacity is this much. That's for a brand new, just manufactured trailer. You have a
Right.
10-year-old that has gone through Vietnam War. you've got to take the wear and tear off a little bit. Like, no, I would say this much. So yeah, you would need a Jeep. Yeah, you would need a booster. I find that's the biggest thing with permitting, especially with agencies, especially with the province and state, you know, the actual
Hmm.
transportation people you talk to get a permit. There's no actual like experience. It's like the
Right.
other day I was getting a simple permit. Simple. And because their system said that's wrong, that doesn't work, you need this, this, and this, they didn't
Hmm.
know what to do because they don't know experience. They haven't been taught. Any Joe Blow, Jane Doe off the street can come in, work in a permit agency, work in a permit,
Hmm.
provincial state permit, not get proper training or education on it, and
Right.
then permit these loads or tell the drivers wrong information. And at the end of the day, if the permit's wrong, it's the driver's issue. Now, that's one thing I will tell the drivers, read your permit. The amount of guys, like,
Good
I get
advice.
it. We are human. We make mistakes.
Oh, well.
Read your permit. I don't care if you've been trucking 5 years. I don't care if you've been trucking 50 years.
Hmm.
Read it because that is the difference between you reading your permit right there and then and saying, whoa, I said I was 15.6, not 13.5, and then you've got my width at 15.6, getting the width and the height mixed up. Like, can you fix that?
No, that's good advice. I would suggest that. And then, like you said, it doesn't hurt for even the driver to read it and then go remeasure because you're
Yeah.
better off figuring that out before you ever leave your place. Because once you get out on the road, it's nothing but trouble, I would imagine, not having something right or being off because I don't know how it is in Canada, but the DOT always seems to find the truck that's trying to slip through, and like, oh, I can get through it. It never fails. If it always has with me anyway. It seems like it's a never ending story.
I think we need to take a little bit of a lesson in Canada to the US DOT because it's kind of failing in that department a little bit, I
Really?
feel, So I think
Mm-hmm.
we should definitely take heed of what the US are doing and kind of instill that into Canada because there is a lot of companies slipping through the cracks and causing
Mm-hmm.
these huge accidents, these overpasses, and honestly ruining it, making it
Really?
harder for the companies that do abide by the rules, that are safe. And it is starting to really, really ruin the industry up here with that
Well,
stuff. So,
Well, that kind of brings me to my next segment I wanted to get into. But speaking on what you were talking about, we're having a lot of problems with verification of drivers, foreign companies coming in, starting trucking companies, and making a disaster down here. I seen an article the other day about Super Ego. All the issues with them that's caused a big stir this week. We had Shannon Everett on with us the other day. He's part of American Truckers United, trying to support the Delilah Law. That was a good show that we had. We could still do a lot with that. There's not enough structure. There's not enough officers, in my opinion. I've got so many ideals. Like for once, I think that you know how in airplanes we have towers and we can see where every airplane is in the air in the world.
yeah.
We should have that at least in North America for trucks. That's what I wanted to ask you on structure, verification, trust. Do you need a lot of documents of the driver for your permits, or is more permits basically more for the carrier themselves information, or what type of information do you actually need for just typical permits?
So, pretty much like the most you get into for driver information is a name and a phone number. That's really all you need. For everything else, it's all the carrier information, DOT number, FEIN number or
Mm-hmm.
EIN number, which is like your employee identification number, federal employee identification number. in Canada, sometimes that is known as your GST number, your goods and services
Okay.
tax number. What it is that your DOT number, whatever goods and services tax number you did, or FEIN or EIN, is linked to that DOT number. That's what they're asking for, is to ask, like, okay, you've got this DOT number. What's that tax identification number that's linked to that DOT? Because a lot of times people will, stop business for a year, they'll redo their DOT number, but they'll be under a new tax
Mm,
identification number.
right.
And they don't comprehend like each other. And then you're stuck in a position that it happens more often than not, where you're sitting there being like, okay, your tax identification number does not fit the DOT number. Do you have your DOT information from when you filed for your DOT number to show what tax identification number it is? If it's not the same and if it's not linked at all, you need to change it.
Mm-hmm.
And, I get fired off like 5 or 6 different numbers, and I'm sitting here thinking it's none of these. All the drivers I know, and I know a lot of drivers, I know a lot of owner operators, I know a lot of company drivers. The good ones, the last thing you want to do is micromanage them,
Mm-hmm.
know exactly where they are. They want to be trusted.
Right.
They do their best work when they are 110% trusted by the
Mm-hmm.
company they're working for and for the people around. When you start micromanaging these guys that have been hauling heavy haul for, 10 years, 20, 30, 40, 50, you know,
Mm-hmm.
they start to put doubt in their head. They start to doubt, am I good enough to do this? And
Yeah, you wouldn't
then
need
that
them
is
for
where you
that.
get accidents. That is where you get safety concerns. That is when you get mental health problems. That is when I feel like, I don't want to sound racist with this in any way, shape, or form, and I really don't. But
Mm-hmm.
I feel like if you are getting, a CDL in the US or you're getting your class one in Canada, it needs to be a Canadian, born and raised Canadian, who has a
Mm-hmm.
driving school to tell you, yep, you can get your license, or nope, you can't even read that sign because you can't read English.
Yep.
And I've
Exactly.
seen a lot of like news reports where, and I'm not going to call out any, anything like that, but there
Mm-hmm.
has been reports where when it's not a Canadian, born and raised person owning the company, they will turn around and be like, "Oh, you don't have to do the 10 hours. We'll just sign off on it.
Mm-hmm.
Just take
Yeah.
this test, and if you need any help, we'll help you pass it.
Mm.
And you don't have to pay $12,000. Just give me $3,000 in cash, and we can get your license done." No,
Yeah.
no, no,
Yeah.
nay, nay. I do not permit companies like that. I refuse. I
Good for
do
you.
refuse work, especially when and my gut goes crazy,
Mm-hmm.
because not only that, those type of companies are the ones that will not pay you either.
Right.
And they're the ones that you'll get a permit for them, you will get everything they need, you will do exactly what they ask of you. But if they get stopped at the border, if they get stopped at a DOT office, they are the first ones on the phone to tell you that you are horrible at your job. You did this wrong. It is your fault, this, that, the other thing. And you're sitting
Mm-hmm.
there going, no. And it is very important too. And I tell a lot of people this, I don't like getting phone calls with your information. Like
Mm-hmm.
you telling me you're this high, this wide, this is the weight. I want you
Right.
to email or text me. I like paper trails, because if
Exactly.
you turn around at a scale and say, "Well, I said this," and then you get a
Mm-hmm.
DOT involved and you get the DOT shouting at me, I can turn
Exactly.
around in my records and say, "No, he said this." And that's the thing
100%
too, is
agree.
that I could be your best friend. I will go to bat for you
Mm-hmm.
as soon as you cross me. No, I'm saving my skin.
Exactly. You got to take
Like
care of yourself first.
yeah, because if you're going to throw me under the bus like that, no, that's not okay. Like we all do jobs here. If you for one time accidentally forgot to do something, and
Hmm.
instead of taking accountability for it, you want to pass it on to someone who you think, no, she's not going to turn around and say, no, I didn't do that. You damn right I
Yeah,
will. I have
I
no
don't blame you.
problem saying, hey, no, I did my job. Let's look a little deeper here. Because we
Hmm.
are the first ones. The permit people are always the first ones to get the phone call saying, oh, you messed up my permit. Oh, you did this, you did that. You look back and you're like, no, I did whatever you asked me to do, kind of deal.
Yep.
The other thing is, too, is that if a permit person did do it wrong, the permit company, the permit person, they don't get, they don't need to take any accountability. It's all the driver. So if they
Hmm.
did make a oopsie and they turn around and say, well, no, we didn't, it was this, it was this, it was that, it was this, it wasn't us, all this stuff, they don't get any accountability and they don't need to do anything to change it to make it better for them. The the driver gets the ticket, the driver gets the court date, the driver gets,
Yep.
the insurance claim,
Absolutely.
the hit on their carrier profile. They get everything, and the permit agencies get nothing. I think
Mm.
that is wrong. I have
Yeah.
made plenty of mistakes, and I think that needs to change. I think the permit agencies themselves need to get held at
That's some
more
accountability. Hmm.
accountability,
I agree. Yeah.
because at the end of the day, you are doing an important job that you're, the driver is putting trust in you to make sure you do your job properly so they can do their job properly. If
Mhm.
you mess up in any way, you get to put it behind you, go on to the next move.
Well, and the driver's the one that's got the least involved in it. He picks it up. I mean, yeah, he should read his permit to make sure he's in, but I mean, he don't really have a whole lot of say in any of it. He's just there to pick it up, and he's the one that takes the biggest hit. Well, one thing I wanted to ask you about drivers, the company that's our main sponsors, Ready App, they are doing what they call a driver passport, where a driver owns their information. They can put in their CDL medical card. They can put all their endorsements, accident reports. They can put their permits in there, different things. Have you seen any issues to where, like here in the States, we have a lot of bad apples, a lot of non-domicile CDL drivers. The stuff that we see online is not really permitted loads. They're just, a simple drive-in, deals. That's where we see a lot of it, and mainly. But do you see where you're having any issues with these really not truck drivers or not? I don't know what you really want to call them, really a non-school take taken test, to
Yeah.
where a passport would help where, like if you're doing a super max or a super load or mega load, would that not be a little important to the simple fact of everybody knowing that this person is legit and is can actually do it? Because I mean, we always make this saying all the time that a regular tractor trailer in the United States is an 80,000 pound bomb. All right, when you get to a mega or super load, you're talking a couple 100,000 pounds maybe in some instances. I mean, that's a major task, and you want to make sure it's legit people doing it. I know that a lot of times it's a little bit probably harder for those very bad apples to get those type of loads, but it only
Mhm.
takes one to be disastrous.
You would be surprised. And I guess it's like really the oil field. It's not what
Hmm.
you know, it's who you know.
Mm.
That's a lot of the industry. Oh, well, he's so and so's brother. He's okay. He can do it. But then you look back on so and so's work and you're like, he's hit 13 overpasses between Langley and North Vancouver. And you're going to let him do this?
Is there some type of information that lets anybody know that he's had that had has hit that many overpasses, or is there some organized that you would see that, or a carrier would see that? Is there something, a database for that, or just an accident report, I guess?
Skilled Truckers Facebook page. That's the biggest one. No, honestly, it would be the company. And the
Hmm.
only way you would see it is if their national safety certificate got revoked
Okay.
in their home province. There's been a lot of companies that are actually on that list, that went from BC regulated to then Alberta. So pretty much like say John started a company in BC.
Hmm.
Let's do John Trucking.
Hmm.
He made such a mess that BC took his national safety fitness away. Okay, well, John just went over the border. His sister lives down in Calgary. I'm going to use your address and I'm going to get an
Hmm.
Alberta business number and I'm going to start up a company and we'll be rolling by tomorrow. I think it needs to be federally regulated, and the person who owns the company and even family members need to be added on because there was also a guy, this was years ago, he owned a pig farming company. He was not allowed to work in livestock, but then put his new company under his wife's name to haul livestock. That is wrong. I think it needs to be federally where, okay, John Doe, you cannot own or run a business for, and it depends on how severe it
Right,
is.
right.
And you cannot go into Alberta and do it. You cannot get your sister to do it. You can't get your
Hmm.
brother-in-law to do it. Like, I think that needs to be done because a lot of people are doing that.
Oh yeah. Yeah, they do it
And
here in
it
the States
sounds
all the
really
time.
bad, but a lot of the immigrants are doing that. They are
Hmm.
getting told to do that by consulting companies
Yep.
that, hey, have this business, have another business on the side, two or three of them, have each
Hmm.
business own a truck or five, lease onto the main business. Then, if that
Hmm.
business goes down, you have these five where you can then lease the rest to this one, but have it under your wife, your sister, your mother, and
Yep.
then put yourself as like a shareholder or something like that in order to be able to still make decisions and rules for the
Yeah,
company.
we had a guest on the other day, and he was spotlighting a subdivision in Indiana. The subdivision of maybe 30 homes had
Hmm.
over like 75, I think he said, trucking companies within those 30 homes. And why that doesn't raise eyebrows, I have no clue. So I agree with you totally on that. Well,
Yeah.
but before we let you go, kind of tell everybody how they can find you, and if you want to go back over what all you can, some of the things that you do, and so we can make sure you get some listeners to give you a shout.
Yeah, for sure. So my company is called The Permit Girl. You can find me on LinkedIn under Dani Howells. You can find me on Facebook under The Permit Girl Ltd. And I'm also on Instagram as The Permit Girl Ltd as well, I do believe. I don't know my
Hmm.
handle there, but you'll
Yep.
know it's me. I do, posts on LinkedIn and everything with my email, with my phone number. If you go onto my website, it is very, very outdated, so I need to update that at some point. So don't go off my website, go off my social media. And yeah, I can permit anything from six axle to 600 axle. um, simple licensing and fuel all the way up to mega moves, utility approvals, all that good stuff. I can get route surveys, pilots, bucket trucks, all
Hmm.
that good stuff. Like pretty much anything that you need from A to B. And you get me every time.
And I would think that's important that they get to talk to the same person
Hmm.
all the time. I mean, yeah, you might want to grow at some point and have multiple people, but that's a lost art in almost every industry now of getting to talk to the source every time. So that's very beneficial. So everybody that's out there listening, definitely, give her a call, check her out on social, let her help you out with that. I do want to thank our sponsors that make this show happening. First, of course, is graycross.org. Trucking families who lost a loved one on the road, they'll go in, help with funeral costs, doctor's bills. They'll bring you groceries, clothes, whatever you need to get through those tough times. If you can go there, donate $1, $5, $10, any amount helps. So that's graycross.org. And then, of course, our main sponsor, Ready App. We appreciate their support. Ready App is helping structure trust and efficiency into trucking. The driver passport, drivers go check that out. It takes about 20 minutes to take care of that. They've got jobs on there available. You can do your own DOT application if you want to send it. We fixing to have driver benefits coming across, so go check that out. So go check them out. It's ready-app.com. Again, Dani, we really appreciate you coming on. We'll have to have you back on again sometime. I'd like to get into it with you about some of the crazy loads that you permitted. But this has been Behind the Wheelhouse. We appreciate you all checking us out today. Go check all our socials, and we'll see you next time.